Morning, guys. Afternoon. Whatever time you're watching this. Joe here. It's been a while since we've done anything with tech. Today we are going to take apart this Red Devil because I want to put it in a different case. It's been on this P5 chassis for quite a while, and the P5 chassis is a wonderful chassis. For this setup, being that it's a custom hardline tubing, it doesn't work as well because if I want to change a component, I basically have to disassemble the whole damn thing anyways. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to take this system off of here, return this back to the way it was, including putting the power supply back where it's supposed to be. Wow, those are dusty. My apartment got really dusty lately. And I'm going to put all of these components into my Fractal Design XLR 2 case, and I'm going to put my i5-3470 BioStar TZ75 system on here and make that a test bench, because believe it or not, even though it's just a 3470, 3540, I don't remember which processor it is, I'll have to look at it when I put it on there. I had that overclocked to almost 600 Cinebench, which is better than a lot of i3s that are out there, so it can be a test bench for cheap video cards, 650s, 750s, 1030s, whatever. And this will go into a nice case. I'm going to put my LEDs back in it, and then I'll get bored with it in a week or two. No, I'm just kidding. Eventually, I'm going to redo all of this onto a P5 chassis, which is much bigger, and I'll actually put in a picture of my old P5 build, which wasn't even hardline tubed and didn't have a whole lot taking up space, but you can see the difference between how crowded this looks. Although this looks nice to me. It doesn't look too crowded because of the way I set it up, but this is kind of crowded for a P3. Obviously, a P3 was never designed to have radiators down here. It was only supposed to have a 360 right there. So what I'm doing is returning it to the way it should be. First thing we have to do, obviously, is drain this loop. And again, since I have this down here, I can very easily drain the system. Make sure you clean any catch stars you have. I've used these before, but I made sure to scrub them out so that they're crystal clear, because this fluid is not dirty. My blocks are not dirty, and I don't want to introduce dirt or dust or anything else into the system that can create a problem down the road. So, like I said, first thing we have to do is actually go ahead and disassemble the system. So, and I did at least find the headphones I've been looking for 2 weeks. I have some work to do, so I'll come back after I've drained the system. Okay. Alright, hour 2, and as you can see, completely disassembled. Well, not completely disassembled, I have to put a couple of parts back on it, but everything's off that I'm going to be transferring into the new case, or the other case. So the next thing to do is to move this over to where I have the box for it, and grab the other case. So I'll be right back. Now, some of you may remember this case from such successful videos as Project Kimchi Part 2, The Win. I think so. Yeah, it was in here. Also, there was a sick PC, bro, which you can also see up here. There. And yeah. So what I have to do now is I have to take a few parts out, and also I need to do some test fitting, because obviously, you know, we have some fitment issues. So I'm thinking this top cage is going to have to come out, which is fine, but I do have to drill some rivets to do so. So let's go ahead and do that now. Hello. I also, you know, moved my CPU motherboard onto the box from whence it came. We'll put that over there. Go ahead and take the front off this son of a bonga. And yes, I am going to be putting it into a case with an actual door. Whatever. Hello. So even though the 2 cages that were below it were removable, this top cage is actually riveted in. And the easiest way to remove that is with one of these. So all you got to do is find the rivets that hold it in, and drill them out as such. There's only 6, I think, on this one, which is good because I hate drilling out tons and tons of rivets. I'll come back when I'm done. You don't need to see me doing that. Upon closer examination, there's actually 3 more down here. Voila! There we go. Simple, easy, cool, calm, collected, under control, and voila! We now have full height availability. The next thing to do is probably, well, I gotta get rid of this AIO that's in there. It's my old Corsair from one of the other computers. And next thing to do, I think, is remove this front fan cage. Wow, simple, easy. Because I'm gonna mount the 240 to this one, and the 360 is actually gonna go up here. Let me reattach the front real quick so I can show you something though. One thing you'll notice is that this case only is supposed to support a 280 up here. I'm going to mount the 360 anyways because I'm 99% sure that it'll work just fine. And by 99% sure, I mean 100% sure, because I don't care about this last one, because I'm going to mount, hopefully I have enough room for push-pull, and then I'll just leave a blank space behind this section so that the hot air just goes up over here and out the top. I'm going to do a little bit more disassembly on this particular case, and I'm going to wipe it out and I'll come back to you. So the next step is I used the front fan mount, which can hold 240 or 280 rads. Obviously this is a 240, and it can also hold 120 and 140 fans. Now, because it's going to be sitting behind a door, I didn't put my LED ring fans in the front. I'm going to put the LED ring fans on the back. But what I love about this thing is it's so simple. Ready? Ta-da! Front radiator is mounted. As you can see, front radiator is mounted now. So I think next thing I'm going to do is bolt in the, I don't know. Actually, I haven't decided yet because I still have to make the drives fit in here, and the power supply, and the banana, and all that other good stuff. So, some kajiggering needs to happen, and I'll be back with you. Kind of a cool thing I just figured out works is I was goofing around, as I does, and my NZXT H440 power shroud actually works in here. Obviously it's not 100% secured, maybe I'll work on that later, but it's going to allow me to mount my SSDs right here, as well as mount the pump and the reservoir right there. I'm going to put the floor mount on here, but that also means that I'll have room under here for some other stuff. I still have to figure out how to get my double hard drives in here, but I'll figure that out. But I thought that was cool and an easy use of older parts. So, and it'll clean it up. So, yeah, yay! I put the flat base on the Enermax pump res combo, and one thing I'd like to point out, the Enermax pump res combo, number one, SATA power, awesome. Yeah, SATA, 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 SATA. And also, it's already sleeved, so you can put it in a case and not have to sleeve it yourself. Additionally, if you can see that from the angle, I decided to mount the hard drives vertically. Now I'm probably going to do some kind of like maybe a black vinyl wrap on top of the hard drives to black them out eventually. But yeah, with that, I eliminated the drive cages. I am going to probably find a way to mount my Blu-ray player in here. And what else? Yeah, I still have to mount the pump res combo down, as well as mount the top radiator. So I'm going to do those right now. Okay, I've skipped a few things because I was getting a little frustrated because the graphics cards weren't lining up exactly right with the back, and that's because there was a screw in there, and it's just, you know, long story, long story, long story. However, I do have a lot of the wiring going. I've attached two SSDs to the power shroud, and we're going to go ahead and do our thing here, which is run the SATA cables up through these holes, plug them all into the drives, and then I'm going to slide the cover in here. I've already attached all the front I/O on there because it needed to be done. Because when this shroud is in there, obviously since this isn't designed for this computer case, it wouldn't fit. So I've got to I got to do that. Still got to mount the fan back here. I'm going to use my other ring fan here, and then I'm going to put the front radiator back in along with the pump res, and then I'm going to run those hoses after I finish this cable management here, and then we're gonna have to leak test this whole thing, which is the scariest part, obviously, since I'm doing this inside of a damn case. But I think we'll be okay. So next thing to do is go ahead and attach all the cables. We're getting there. We are getting there. I am very tired. My back is completely seized up, but we are getting there. And I'm realizing that I cannot make a mistake because I only have 2 pieces of full-length PETG tube. Luckily, the only long runs are going to be from the back of the radiator to here, down to there, and I think I'm going to use a 90-degree fitting for that in order to make that easier. So Bits Power 90-degree rotary fitting, and that will go there. And I think I'm going to do something weird with the graphics cards, in that I'm going to run them parallel, but they're going to run upside down from the norm. Now originally the old setup was it came up into the inlet, out of the outlet down to here, and it went through both cards in parallel, out this one into the radiator, and then the other radiator went up to the top. Well, since everything is reoriented, I think the order is going to be, it's going to come up from the back of the pump into here. It's going to come out of this one into here in order to keep it from crossing itself. It's going to come in, it's going to go upside down parallel and come out here, and it will go up into the radiator, through the radiator, blah, 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 down here, over into this radiator, out of here, back into the reservoir. Because obviously using a not for this item basement means I have to reroute everything because I don't have the room to run a downpipe. However, the basement is really nice to have in there. And then, to be honest, I'll probably wind up doing something with this shield, probably just like blacking it out and putting it back on here. Either that or painting it like a dark red. Or I may just leave it like that. I don't know. As I said, eventually the goal is to build a P5 system using that X99 motherboard. Eventually this system will be completely torn down. These graphics cards will go back in the box when I can afford like a 1080 Ti someday. And then I will go ahead and wind up using this motherboard, CPU, unless I can find a 6950X for a reasonable price at some point. And obviously the SSDs and everything in here in another build. So for now I have to make the pipe for the return for this, and then I still have to make this and this. I have to make all the piping, okay? That's all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get to that, and we'll see what we can do. So yeah, I think this is just going to have a slight tweak in it. It'll be easier than bending an entire another one. I think I'm good now. As you can see, I've done a couple of things, and let me zoom you in and we can discuss them. So I have the pump res mounted here and sitting on the floor. It doesn't move much, but whatever, it's not going to move. Obviously, like I said, I did the reverse parallel versus, up down, going into the top rad. The top rad goes into the radiator goes into the reservoir, and back out to the CPU block. So hopefully this one works, this route. And obviously one of the biggest detriments I have is, well, because of the way I have it routed back here, it's very tight up against the 24 pin, but I don't think that's going to cause any problems. Next thing to do is to start filling the system, and I thought I would go ahead and do that on camera. Just using a regular old syringy thingy. Technical term. You can look that up on Amazon, syringy thingy. Couple of things I want to go over before I continue. Number one is when you are filling your system and you don't know if it's watertight or not, you should probably not fill it all the way to the top every single time. What you do is you run enough to get it started through, because your main joints that are going to leak would be stuff like this. It's a very narrow 90 which honestly, if I had a good double 90 extra, I would have used, and I couldn't bend it because these are my failed stuffs. You know, obviously you're going to fail on some bends when you're making them, and these were no exception. But I did recover a bunch of my 90s because I actually only wound up using 2 in the whole system other than my rotating 90, which is good. But another way to tell if you might have a leak is try moving the tubes. If you can't move them very easily, this one moves because it's not supported. This one moves the entire radiator, but this one doesn't move hardly at all. This doesn't move at all. This one doesn't move at all. So I have a pretty good chance that it's not going to leak. So let's continue filling. Quick word before we keep going. I use EK cryofuel because it seems to work great. I don't get any real buildup in the system because it's just a clear red fluid. I would like to try a pastel or a View type fluid in the future, but unfortunately I've seen a lot of bad reviews and bad results. So I trust the EK cryofuel. I always have extra, of course. You know, I have almost an entire extra bottle of brand new fluid. And I always make sure to check the fluid after I remove it for any particulates. In fact, I filtered this fluid the last time I used it. And because it's actually designed by EK to be used in this system, I just go ahead and run it the way it is. You don't need to add like PT nuke or anything like that to this particular fluid. Next thing to do is, as you can see, I have the reservoir full, so I'm going to take the wiring, which is a single SATA connector on this one, and I'm going to use the SATA connector on this power supply. This is always the scariest part of any build. And as you can see, it very easily has enough pressure because it's only at half speed right now too. Well, the first part of the fill seems to have gone well, so I'm going to continue to fill the res again. So as I'm filling it, I'm feeling a little bit of fluid around this port, and I did have a feeling this port might be a problem just because the plastic that's in here has been degraded a little bit. For some reason it was damaged when I took the last fitting off, but I guess we'll see what happens here. Let me just put a little bit of power to it. I don't want to keep filling it if I have to drain it. It seems dry, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to fill. Okay, now that I have it running, it doesn't appear to be leaking anywhere. I don't see any major air bubbles in the lines. That's a very easy way to tell if you have any blockage in your system, is if any of your lines have a lot of bubbling in it. Now there is bubbling obviously in this top line, but that should go away. So I just wanted to show you that's how much head pressure and power this pump has from the Enermax, what do they call this? The Neo Changer pump res combo. And this is the 250 millimeter or 200 millimeter. It holds 400 milliliters of fluid. Now normally I wouldn't let it cavitate that much, but I'm just trying to make sure that the lines are running good. I'm going to slow the pump back down. And now that we have it full up to that line, which is above the fill, or the, I guess it's for anti-cavitation, it allows it to go in without creating air bubbles. It should work out all the rest of these bubbles that I formed by running it too fast and causing cavitation. But I think for the next 5 or 6 hours I'm just going to let it sit here and run to make sure that there are no leaks. And then I will get back to reassembling the front as well as buttoning this up and putting the LEDs in it. We've been running for a few hours, no leakage apparent. The only place I was actually scared of is bone dry. Now the last thing to do is to reassemble the entire computer, because currently right now the only thing that's connected is these two SSDs, which I kind of like at the angle they want to being at, as well as the 3 fans up top. I have to put the last fan here in the back and run that cable around the back to the chassis fan splotch, as well as connect all the connectors for the power supply. I don't have them all hooked up yet, so I'm going to do that, and I think the next time you see this system, it will be, yep, and running. It's all set up. Haven't turned it on yet. You're going to be the first ones with me, so let's even see if this damn thing boots. A lot of lights, that's good. Some more air bubbles, that's fine. Ha! We got a boot! We got a boot! Gotta change my boot menu. Also, make sure all my fans are on. So, this is a good sign so far. So all the fans seem to be working. Motherboard temperature says 22 degrees, CPU temperature 25 degrees, which means that it is running through the system at the right speed. So I'm going to go in, make sure this is still on, 4100, yep. Let's go into boot. Boot option 1 is the same, still sees it, sees that one, sees all 4 drives. So next thing to do is just go ahead and boot. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I still have to throw some LEDs in there, but once I do, it's going to look pretty badass. Okay, pulling up my hardware monitor, and I do want to show you guys something. People don't believe how cool my system runs. This thing runs cool. It could be the fact that I have a really strong pump. It could be the fact that I have 600 millimeters of radiator and a decent CPU block and decent graphics cards that have been designed to have water cooling done to them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open a Cinebench and run a Cinebench stress test real quick. Let you see that. Still running an SLI. So what I'll do is I will run the Cinebench with my hardware monitor open, because it will actually lower the score, but I want to see what the temps get up to. Looking good. I think the max score I'm seeing so far is what, 45 degrees C, and then 49 on the entire package. So as you can see, the highest core went to 45 degrees Celsius. That's at 4.1 gigahertz, and a V-core of 1.28. I think that's V-core. No, that's not V-core. Where's V-core? V-core. What? That's not right. Sorry, I was confused for a second, because if you're looking here, CPU V-core is set to auto right now, and it didn't even use 1 volt. I'm going to run this test again. I think next I'm going to open up his hardware CPU Z, because I want to see what that's running. So here we have the accurate core voltage at 1.266, which is where it should actually be for this processor. So hardware monitor for some reason wasn't reading that correctly, but everything else seems to be reading all right. Now I'm sure the armchair quarterbacks among you will notice that I have my RAM sticks in on that side only. Now an X99 platform does suggest that if you're running only 2 sticks, that you run an A1 and D1, especially on this Strix board, but that ADATA RAM is wonky. If I let it run in D1 or even C1, because it has 8 slots, it doesn't actually see it and it doesn't use it. So I have to run it in B1 in order to get the full 16 gigabytes of RAM. And since I'm only running dual channel anyways, it really doesn't matter. But I think next what I'll do is I'll take you off of there and I'll do a little bit of filming on the, the computer itself. Starting with, obviously, the case. As I said, this is a Fractal Design XLR2 by my research. I might be wrong. And normally, and I'll put a picture of it here because obviously I had cages in here before, it would have a drive cage there, hard drive cage there and a hard drive cage there. For the purposes of doing this, I removed the hard drive cage and the drive cage because I wanted to radiator out this mofo. Additionally, it has a NZXT H440i power supply shield, and it's not bolted in, but it doesn't have to be because it's a press fit. It's that tight in there, and it gives me room to mount 2 SSDs on here as well as run all my cables underneath, so it doesn't look too bad. You can see it's nice and decent under there. There's a couple of cables hanging out, but I did that on purpose. In terms of the interior of it, I have a 240mm XSPC radiator mounted with push-pull, which is a set of 140mm Fractal design fans. Pushing and pulling is 2 Thermaltake Ring 120 SP 120 fans. Sorry, that was a mouthful and it didn't come out right. Up top is an XSPC radiator with 3 120mm ring fans again. Now I will show you that it only has 2 exhaust ports on the top. That's because typically there was a drive cage here. But because of the surface area and as well as the fact that it can dissipate up all the heat from there when all the fluid's coming in there anyways, it's going to be hottest there, coolest there, that it has plenty of cooling, as I've just demonstrated by the results on Cinebench and Hardware Monitor. So those blow up. And I have one other red ring fan, Thermaltake again, exhausting air out the back. Being an SP fan, it moves plenty of air. So there should be no problem with airflow in the case. It should create, I believe, a positive case situation once I decide to put a side panel on it. Now, because I went so different with it and I'm using a power supply shroud, it did hide everything as well as tidied up the Enermax Neo Changer 400 milliliter 200 millimeter pump res combo. And as you saw in the other parts of the video, it has way more head pressure than is necessary to keep 2 EVGA GTX 770 hydrocoppers cool, as well as a Asus Strix X99 gaming motherboard with a Core i7 6800K. Now I am aware that a 6850 does have more PCIe lanes. This has 28, that has 40. And the 6950X obviously would be the ultimate CPU for this combo, outside of a Xeon, of course. I can't afford either of those, so I'm happy with my X99 system. And I'm using, again, CryoFuel Blood Red fluid. It's the clear fluid. I've never had a problem with it. It's just basically water with coloring in it and anti-corrosives, which is the biggest thing. And the fact that it's not distilled water gives it better heat dissipation than just distilled water. Almost all of the fittings are bits power except for the silver and red ones. There's a few of them within the system because I got those on Amazon and they seem to work really well. And these fittings actually have double O-rings in them, so they should be less prone to leakage. You can kind of see through the back there. It's reflecting some of the light. I mounted the hard drives vertically, as I said I would, so there's 2 spinning hard drives for a total of 2 gigabytes because I don't have bigger hard drives right now, and I don't even fill up the 2 that I have there. And down there I have 2 SSDs. The first one is a PNY 120 gig. That's been my boot drive forever. The second one is a 250 gigabyte Samsung 850 EVO that I got from my father. He gave that to me in another system. I think that's about it. I think the system looks pretty damn kick-ass if you ask me. And the last thing I will wind up doing is taking my LED strips that were currently behind the desk there, and I'm going to run them inside the case in the front, and those will light up either white or red. I haven't decided, and I think it will look really good. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. If you have any comments, leave them down below. Any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, I'll talk to you later.